Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it is another video in my 2023 NFL offseason prediction series, and today it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Make sure to leave a thumbs up on this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave your comments in the comment section below about what you think about the Pittsburgh Steelers and their offseason opportunities and my predictions for them in this video. And we'll start with sort of the obvious about Pittsburgh, and that is they're a team that is never seemingly out of it. They had a rough start to the year, but they really did a great job of regathering themselves halfway through the season and to remain a threat. Like, things started to click a bit for them. They traded away Chase Claypool, who, looked like he was a bit of a locker room issue. And I don't think it's any coincidence that all of a sudden, after getting rid of him, they sort of had more discipline, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Their defense was always really good, I guess you could say. I mean, you look at the guys that they have coaching that defense. We'll start with the fact that they were able to get Brian Flores sort of off the street out of nowhere, one of the best defensive coaches, one of the best coaches in the NFL. And then they have probably one of the greatest coaches of all time in Mike Tomlin, who's never had a losing season. And this looked like it was the first year that they were going to do it, and he somehow rallied the troops and got them over 500. And within half a game, I think it was, half a game of making the playoffs. So had they had one more game just gone their way, it would have been them in the playoffs playing Buffalo instead of Miami. So there's a lot to be said about that. There's a lot to be said about Mike Tomlin's ability as a coach, and that's who we're going to start with here in the series. We're talking about the head coach. So I do feel like Mike Tomlin is very much like Bill Belichick in a sense of that, and this year was complete and utter proof of that. As long as they have him, they're always going to have a chance. They're always going to be a team that is a threat to win week in and week out. He always puts together a great staff, clearly in the preparation for the lead up to the week, each and every game. He has it down to an absolute science. I would rank him as one of the greatest coaches of all time, period. There's Belichick, there's Parcells, there's Bill Walsh, but then you got to throw Mike Tomlin in there. I don't know that he would be the greatest Steelers head coach of all time with Chuck Noll, but also Chuck Noll was the coach at a much different time. And the fact that Tomlin has been this dominant, obviously Noll had like 30 years in there, but is there any doubt that Tomlin isn't going to be the head coach of Pittsburgh for as long as he wants to be the head coach there? It's just incredible. And we look at some of the rankings that they have. Granted, this will start with the offensive rankings, where I know a lot of Pittsburgh fans were not happy with their offensive coordinator, and I could see why. You had your rookie quarterback, Kenny Pickett, who many argued was overdrafted. You signed Mitchell Trubisky, so you probably had one of the worst quarterback rooms going into this year, and it did kind of show. Points 26th, yards 24th, last in passing touchdowns, 28th in total touchdowns, 23rd in red zone percentage. It wasn't great. Then you're middle of the pack in rushing yards. You need to be better than that if you're going to be that poor in passing yards. So that's really where they sort of lost a lot of their ability to be successful this year. They didn't turn the ball over a lot. They didn't get sacked a whole lot, at least not as much as you would think, but their offensive line was not playing up to par. That's for sure. It was had to throw a lot of quick passes in there. The running game, of course, wasn't executing as well as they hoped with Najee Harris, who they invested highly in. And looking back now, maybe that wasn't the greatest choice for the long-term success of this team. But this is where we go to the defense, and this is where Mike Tomlin and his staff really thrived. They were great against the run, I think, as per always, and they were great about not giving up points. Against the pass is where they really did struggle. They had a terrible cornerback room. That didn't open up the opportunities for their pass rush to really be as strong as they wanted to be. Alex Highsmith had a had a good year, but I mean, how much can you count on that going forward? He would have like a couple of good games and then would disappear for 4 or 5 games at a time, and then all of a sudden come out and get 3 sacks. So it's the consistency level of Highsmith, I think, is a concern going forward, which is why they finished middle of the pack in sacks. I think after they were number 1 last year in that category. I know TJ Watt wasn't playing all year, and excuses. But then you have the red zone percentage, their down percentage, not forcing turnovers. So teams were just able to throw the ball against them, and that is not typical. It's not typical to see a Pittsburgh defense ranked 20th in anything, 28th in anything. And I think that's a testament to what they were doing with the cornerbacks. And really, Cameron Sutton was the only cornerback worth his jersey number, so to speak. And I think that's going to be a key for them moving forward in this offseason, is figuring out that cornerback room and getting bodies in there that Tomlin can at least work with and help grow throughout the year, because it just didn't work out with Levi Wallace and Ahkello Witherspoon and guys like that. So Pittsburgh's going into the season with only $4.5 million in cap space. So the first thing they're going to have to do is figure out a way to clear out some of this cap room with some restructuring and some cuts. There is plenty of opportunities to do that, though. It's not like they're completely strapped the way that New Orleans was. Don't even get me started on that. But when you look at this, I have them restructure Minkah Fitzpatrick, extend his deal, $10 million in cap savings. Then, you cut Ahkello Witherspoon, who was horrendous. I think his PFF grade was like 42. So you cut him, free up $4 million. William Jackson, who you brought in, it's $12 million in cap savings without taking a cap hit. Just, it's better to dump that contract, I think. I don't think William Jackson has played up to a $12 million cap hit anyway. And then Montravius Adams, who just had a horrendous year as well, free up $2.5 million there. Not a lot of significant re-signings, which is nice. It's always nice to see you don't have to anyone truly significant. And no trades really available. The only really significant re-signing that I thought about was Edmonds, the safety. But I thought that maybe you could look into somebody else to fill out that role that might be a bit of an upgrade, a slight upgrade perhaps, and who has a little bit more versatility than Edmonds, who's basically like that strong safety, box safety type of a guy. You want somebody who can maybe complement Minkah Fitzpatrick a little bit better. But with those moves, freed up to $33.8 million in spending cap. And that's a good number to have, especially for a team whose needs are not necessarily, as it stands right now with the free agency class, going to be accommodated through free agency, but the draft is really strong in the positions that they need. So we'll look at those team needs right now. They could use another wide receiver. They have George Pickens and Deontay Johnson, and then they have Calvin Austin. But Calvin Austin's more of like a gadget slot player, so you want to have another receiver out there that's more of a traditional receiver as well. Like a replacement for Chase Claypool, basically, without the attitude problems. Then you want to keep building the O-line. I think that's pretty obvious as well. You get the linebacker group, where you have Myles Jack right now, who is a cut candidate as well. It depends on who you want to play as your linebackers and how much faith you have in Myles Jack. And then, of course, the defensive backs. You want another safety, and you want to get some cornerback help. I think the cornerback position is the biggest need for this team, because you can't be ranked 28th in passing touchdowns, 20th against the pass, and expect to win too many games, especially in the division that you're in, where now you're playing against Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson, and you assume Lamar Jackson is going to stick around in Baltimore. At least Baltimore would hope he does. So you're playing against high quality quarterbacks who they're really starting to build a receiving groups around those guys. And Lamar is always a threat either way. So you want those corners to be able to play really strong on the outside and almost force Lamar to do the exact thing that you want him to do. You don't want to have that threat of him running and passing on every single down, because you don't know what your corner group is going to be doing. I targeted 2 free agents specifically. The first one we'll talk about is Tremaine Edmonds, the brother of Terrell Edmonds. I give him a $14 million cap hit. He had a pretty damn good year. He was a really highly graded linebacker, so a $14 million cap hit. Expecting him to be much better next year and to really thrive in this Pittsburgh system. And he's somebody you can pair up with Miles Jack, I think, quite effectively. And then Taylor Rapp, who, has had some injury issues, but he played well enough where it doesn't look like the Rams are going to be able to afford him and afford to keep him. So a $7 million cap hit for him is a little bit more than what you'd pay for the other Edmonds, the one that was already on the roster that was a free agent for them. But I think you're going to get much more versatility out of Taylor Rapp as long as he can stay healthy. And I think you can structure his deal where you'll get all the benefits if he's healthy, and allow yourself to cut bait if the injuries continue for him and he's not able to stay on the field. But if he can stay on the field, man, you could end up with one of the best safety groups in the NFL, just because it will allow Minkah Fitzpatrick to be much less predictable for the opposing offenses and what he's going to be doing on any given play. And that gives a spending cap of $14.1 million for the draft picks in the roster. Now, they got a lot of good draft capital coming up. They were very smart with that. So they're going to be able to attack a lot of their needs. And filling out the roster, they can renegotiate certain contracts. They can cut some of their lower paid players where there's not a lot of dead money, being free up $1.5 million here, $1.2 million there, at positions where maybe they have an influx of certain players, whether it's on the defensive line or what have you. But they have the ability to really fill out their needs and really fill the holes on their roster without having to worry about new ones opening up in other spots on the team. So this would be my draft strategy for Pittsburgh. They have 3 picks in the top 50. I think it's top 55. I'm pretty sure it's top 55. Top 50, I think, actually. They have 3 picks in the top 50. So you have cornerback, offensive tackle, nose tackle. The way the draft is set up, in the top 50, you could get 3 guys at one at each of those positions and who will be full-time starters. In the first round, there's 5 quality corners you can get in the first round. There's Gonzalez, there's Cam Smith, Joey Porter, Keely Ringo, Devin Witherspoon. There's 5 guys there. Where you're picking, one of those 5 guys will be there at least. So you just pick the one that you want. Then at pick 32, you could go with one of those second wave of offensive linemen like DeJuan Jones, Darnell Wright, Jalen Duncan, Cody Mock. You got all those guys in position there as well. And then you have the nose tackle. So you have guys like Siaki Ika. You got Mozzie Smith, who you could go after as well and still get those guys. Those guys are going to be top 50 picks. They're going to be well within striking range for Pittsburgh come draft day. And then after that, once you get into the 3rd round, that's when you start going after that 3rd edge rusher to help complement what you have going on with Watt and Highsmith. And that's the thing with Highsmith is people are saying in Pittsburgh they don't need an extra edge rusher. And I've been sort of pounding the table on this, is that you should get one for a couple of reasons. If Highsmith comes out next year and does the exact same thing he did this year, then the chances are you're not going to be able to afford him on a contract because he's going to be demanding high-end edge pay for if he has back-to-back strong years. Now, if he comes out and he doesn't have a strong year, well, then you're going to be sitting there like, well, why we need another edge rusher for what? So you're kind of in this position where it makes sense both ways. You're going to have somebody built in there that you can get experience in your defense, so then that way you can move on from Highsmith when he becomes too expensive. Or you have somebody in there who can take over more snaps from Highsmith if he underperforms and goes back to sort of the median of what he was leading up to this year. So there's too much upside to spending maybe a 3rd round pick on one of those edge rushers like a Will McDonald or if one of those guys ends up dropping, because I think a couple edge rushers could end up dropping because there's just so many in this class that are such quality players. And then, of course, role players on offense. That's sort of like a day 3 thing for me for Pittsburgh, is you start looking at these role players like, okay, who's a great contested catch guy? Who's a great separator? Who's more of like a speedy running back maybe? Who's more of a true pass catching tight end? Who's more of a blocking tight end? This is where you really find those role players to sort of fill in these specific needs for specific packages on offense, just to make things flow a lot easier, make things easier on Kenny Pickett, take some of the pressure off of Najee Harris especially, and open up opportunities for more of your star players like Deontay Johnson, like George Pickens, like Pat Freiermuth. Figure out a way to get Calvin Austin involved, because Calvin Austin can be very dynamic for you. So that would be how I would structure their draft, and they have the draft capital to really, really make a giant impact that weekend. And if they do it in this way, they could end up having one of the best drafts, at least on paper, coming out as anyone else in the entire league. And there it is, my offseason predictions for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to leave a thumbs up, even if you didn't. It helps me out. Subscribe if you haven't already, and check out all the other videos in this series, and comment in the comment section what your thoughts are on this video and all the content that follows. And I really appreciate you guys being here, and I appreciate you guys coming back later. And I'll see you guys next time.